Looks like I'm right on time. What's good? Welcome back to another sensible reaction. And let me tell y'all, class is definitely in session because we about to go back to doing a little bit of a series because we have more things to learn. I'm ready to learn, to learn. Okay, this is the reason why I really started to do reaction videos, is because I wanted to sit down with other people who wanted to also learn things. And sometimes you just don't get around to it, right? Sometimes you don't get around to it because of your own relationship with like school, man. You know, when it comes to learning, I know I had to get past excuse me, I had to get past a few things as well for myself that kind of kept me from learning old habits and old things that I had to like sit back and really reflect on for my own self, for my own life, because man, you don't realize how much trauma you have with certain things until it's time to like make it happen. You know what I mean? Y'all bear with me. Hold on one second. Let me try to get this right, cause girl, we gotta talk. We gotta get this done. We got things to do, okay? All right? Also, let me take a deep breath before I begin because I kind of just woke up not too long ago, and this is like the first thing I'm doing, starting my day out, so I need a moment, right? Hold on one second. All right, so we're about to get ready to learn about psychology. This is going to be a psychology crash course. If this is your first time being here and watching any of my reaction videos, hello, how are you doing? I'm ShAyee. Preferably I'm ShAyee, but I want it to be a little bit more formal because we in school, you know what I'm saying, classes again in session. If you did not see the series for Living Trust, you need to go and watch it, okay? I threw a card up too, so go watch that. You can watch it after this, but it's some good knowledge, okay? I again made this channel because, not this channel, but I made this series because I started doing reactions a while ago. And then I stopped because it started becoming a lot of things with flagging and this and that and blah blah blah. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll just make my own content, which is what I started to do and still enjoy doing. So if you don't know, I do gardening content, woodworking content, good day content where I sit down and have real life conversations just about spirituality, life, just everything, anything in general, okay? And I do it in the most authentic way to myself. It's the podcast, but it's just a regular at home sit down talk video. It's not just this big microphone in your face. It's coming from a more of a real world perspective of just in the moment, boom bop. Okay, cool. Now with these sensible reaction videos, it's just that, man, I want to have some sensible commentary when it comes to the things that I watch. I watch anything from educational videos to entertainment. I'm going to start reacting to some things that are funny, you know, relatable to some degree, possibly, but mostly my main goal is to help others learn things that they may not know and get you back in tune with things that you may have already known. You just need a refresher. So that's what we're about to do. Again, this is the psychology crash course. It's quite a few videos in this course. So just keep up with me. I will be doing, I may not just only do these psychology videos in a row. So I might break it up and react to some other things, just so you are aware. So make sure you stay tuned, turn the bell on, subscribe so you can come back and yeah, learn with me. You know what I'm saying? Come to class with me. I'm kind of a class clown sometimes. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I come in here and I'm serious and I want to learn. And then sometimes I'm here and I want to just have a good time. And today is one of those days where I just want to have a good time. Okay? So let's get into the video. Yeah. You just don't be cutting up in class. Get into the video.
Can week old pizza cause psychedelic hallucinations? Does coffee make you smarter? Or does it just make you do dumb stuff faster? Like much of psychology itself, questions like these can seem pretty intuitive. I mean, people may not be the easiest organisms to understand, but you're a person, right? So you must be qualified to draw, like, some conclusions about other people and what makes them tick. But it's important to realize that your intuition isn't always right. In fact, sometimes it is exactly wrong, and we tend to...
And I was just watching a video in regards to this. Hold on real quick. Alright, I was just watching a video in regards to this, but it was more of a spiritual video, but she was just talking about just that, you know what I'm saying? So...
grossly underestimate the dangers of false intuition. If you have some idea about a person and their behavior that turns out to be right, that reinforces your trust in your intuition. Like if I warn my buddy Bob against eating that deep dish pizza that's been in the fridge for the past week, but he eats it anyway and soon starts to wig out, I'm gonna say, dude, I told you so. But if I'm wrong and he's totally fine, I probably won't even think about it ever again. This is known as hindsight bias, or the I knew it all along phenomenon. This doesn't mean that
see, I feel like this when it comes to intuition. I feel like discernment is discernment. Right? Premonition is premonition. And intuition to me could be a tad bit different. It can be a tad bit different now that I'm thinking about it from that perspective. It could be a tad bit different from those other two. And I say that because sometimes intuition is not something that you get to see like a premonition. You get to see, like most times you like have some type of visual or physical or sensual connection, sensory connection to the thing or the event. And to me, intuition is more so like a natural knowing that a lot of times it's not fully played out in your mind. It's just there. I don't know how else to explain it. It's just there, right? It's just like you just knew to do it. Nothing in your mind spoke of such a thing. You didn't have anything that drew you back to another thing and connected you. It's just there. So yeah.
Common sense is wrong. It just means that our intuitive sense more easily describes what just happened than what will happen in the future. Another reason you can't blindly trust your intuition is your natural tendency toward overconfidence. Sometimes you can't blindly trust easily describes what just happened than what will happen in the future. Another reason you can't blindly trust your intuition is your natural tendency toward overconfidence. Sometimes you just really, really feel like you're right about people when actually you're really, really wrong. We've all been there. We also tend to perceive order in random events, which can lead to false assumptions. For example, if you flip a coin 5 times, you have equal chances of getting all tails as you do getting alternating heads and tails. But we see the series of 5 tails as something unusual, as a streak, and thus giving that result some kind of meaning that it very definitely does not have. That is why we have the methods and safeguards of psychological research and experimentation, and the glorious process of scientific inquiry. They help us to get around these problems and basically save the study of our minds from the stupidity of our minds. So I hope that it won't be a spoiler if I tell you now that pizza won't make you trip and coffee doesn't make you smart. Sorry. In most ways, psychological research is no different than any other scientific discipline. Like, step one is always figuring out how to ask general questions about your subject and turn them into measurable, testable propositions. This is called operationalizing your questions. So you know how the scientific method works. It starts with a question and a theory. And I don't mean theory in the sense of like a hunch that, say, a quad shot of espresso makes you think better. Instead, in science, a theory is what explains and organizes lots of different observations and predicts outcomes. And when you come up with a testable prediction, that's your hypothesis. Once your theory and hypothesis are in place, you need a clear and common language to report them with. So, for example, defining exactly what you mean by thinking better with your espresso hypothesis will allow other researchers to replicate the experiment. And replication is key. You can watch a person exhibit a certain behavior once, and it won't prove very much, but if you keep getting consistent results even as you change subjects or situations, you're probably onto something. This is a problem with one popular type of psychological research, case studies, which take an in-depth look at one individual. Case studies can sometimes be misleading.
See, that's what I feel about science in general. Because I feel like sometimes, though they say that they do, and I know it's really just a situation of we only know of what we feel like we know up until this point based on the studies we have done. But if they have not done other studies, or they have not done other experiments, then how you know it to be true? You have not maxed out every possible angle. You know what I'm saying? And also, things expand, things evolve. So I feel like it's just an ongoing thing, of course. And then also, truly, in my opinion, no one knows everything. That's how I'm going to put it. I was going to say no one knows anything, but that's true also to me. In a certain aspect, is a very true thing as well. But no one knows everything. And I'm only saying, not using the word anything, because we can only know to the extent of our knowing, right? And that's just our belief of what is true, right? But in a grand scheme, and I know if I'm sounding like circles, it's okay. We don't have to understand right now. If you understand me, you know. Okay. Now, so I feel like, long story short, we don't really know a damn thing, okay? Truthfully. But in the scheme of what we quote unquote know from a very physical 3D space that we live in, and wherever else we have expanded to in our own individual paths, that's as far as the knowing that we have, right? So when it comes to science, I've always been the type of person where I feel like there's so much more. I've been getting into physics, which we'll get into also at a later date as we continue to go on with this with the sensible reactions. We'll learn so many things, I'm telling y'all. But I've also been with physics, kind of learning some things. Again, I reference back to my book, how do things work, because it kind of it's explaining physics and so forth and so on. But anyway, when it comes to science on all different levels, this is just a bunch of people thinking and experimenting and trying things and using certain standards or a rubric or whatever you would like to call it, the thing to do their experiments, to go by as a rule, to test and blah 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 blah. So you have these standards of physics, and then you do your play out. So at the end of the day, Again, we're just trying a bunch of different things, you know? It's not anything concrete or solid in its truest form, only from what we list as a standard. Long, I know, but yes. When y'all learn about my music and y'all learn about my artist name, you'll understand.
Leading because by their nature they can't be replicated, so they run the risk of overgeneralizing. Still, they're good at showing us what can happen and end up framing questions for more extensive and generalizable studies. They're also often memorable and a great storytelling device psychologists use to observe and describe behavior. Like, say the smell of coffee makes Carl suddenly anxious and irritable. That obviously doesn't mean that it has that same effect on everyone. In fact, Carl has terrible memories associated with that smell, and so his case is actually quite rare. Poor Carl. But you would still have to look at lots of other cases to determine that conclusively. Another popular method of psychological research is naturalistic observation, where researchers simply watch behavior in a natural environment, whether that's chimps poking anthills in the jungle, kids clowning in a classroom, or drunk dudes yelling at soccer games. The idea is to let the subjects just do their thing without trying to manipulate or control the situation. So yeah, basically just spying on people. Like case studies, naturalistic observations are great at describing behavior, but they're very limited in explaining it. Psychologists can also collect behavioral data using surveys or interviews, asking people to report their opinions and behaviors. Sexuality researcher Alfred Kinsey famously used this technique when he surveyed thousands of men and women on their sexual history and published his findings in a pair of revolutionary texts, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male and Female, respectively. Surveys are a great way to access people's consciously held attitudes and beliefs, but how to ask the questions can be tricky. Subtle word choices can influence results. For example, more forceful words like ban or censor may elicit different reactions than limit or not allow. Asking, do you believe in space aliens, is a much different question than, do you think that there is intelligent life somewhere else in the universe? It's the same question, but in the first, the subject might assume that you mean aliens visiting Earth and making crop circles and abducting people and poking them. And if how you phrase surveys is important, so is who you ask. I could ask a room full of students at a pacifist club meeting what they think about arms control, but the results wouldn't be a representative measure of where students stand because there's a pretty clear sampling bias at work here. To fairly represent a population, I'd need to get a random sample where all members of the target group, in this case students, had an equal chance of being selected to answer the question. So, once you've described behavior with surveys, case studies, or naturalistic observation, you can start making sense out of it and even predict future behavior. One way to do that is to look at how one trait or behavior is related to another, or how they correlate. So let's get back to my buddy Bob, who seems to think that his refrigerator is actually some kind of time machine that can preserve food indefinitely. Let's say that Bob is just tucked into a lunch of questionable leftovers, pizza that
You have some people who think that, okay? Baby, their refrigerator, their freezer does not hold their food for a lifetime, okay? Baby, eat that food that's in the refrigerator. Cook that food that's in their freezer, okay? I don't know why this just got my spirit, because I know we're like this. It's not gonna last forever. Okay, that's what I want to say. This stuff does not last forever. Go ahead and eat it. Why do we do this? Like, buy food, let it just sit. I'm gonna eat it then, I'm gonna eat it this day, I'm gonna eat it that day. They ate 1,700 other different things.
may very well have had a little bit of fungus on it, but he was hungry and lazy, and so he doused it in sriracha. Suddenly, he starts seeing things. Green armadillos with laser beam eyes. From here, we could deduce that eating unknown fungus predicts hallucination. That's a correlation, but correlation is not causation. Yes, it makes sense that eating questionable fungus would cause hallucinations, but it's possible that Bob was already on the verge of a psychotic episode, and those fuzzy leftovers were actually benign. Or there could be an entirely different factor involved, like maybe he hadn't slept in 72 hours or had an intense migraine coming on, and one of those factors caused his hallucinations. It's tempting to draw conclusions from correlations, but it's super important to remember that correlations predict the possibility of cause and effect relationships. They cannot prove them. So we've talked about how to describe behavior without manipulating it, and how to make connections and predictions from those findings, but that can only take you so far. To really get to the bottom of cause and effect behaviors, you're gonna have to start experimenting. Experiments allow investigators to isolate different effects by manipulating an independent variable and keeping all other variables constant, or as constant as you can. This means that they need at least two groups: the experimental group, which is gonna get messed with, and the control group, which is not gonna get messed with. Just as surveys use random samples, experimental researchers need to randomly assign participants to each group to minimize potential confounding variables or outside factors that may skew the results. You don't want all grumpy teenagers in one group and all wealthy Japanese surfers in the other. They gotta mingle. Now, sometimes one or both groups are not informed about what's actually being tested. For example, researchers can test how substances affect people by comparing their effects to placebos or inert substances. And often, the researchers themselves don't know which group is experimental and which is control, so they don't unintentionally influence the results through their own behavior. In which case, it's called, you guessed it, a double-blind procedure. So let's put these ideas into practice in our own little experiment. Like all good work, it starts with a question. So the other day, my friend Bernice and I were debating. We're debating caffeine's effect on the brain. Personally, she's convinced that coffee helps her focus and think better, but I get all jittery like a caged meerkat and can't focus on anything. And because we know that overconfidence can lead you to believe things that are not true, we decided to do some critical thinking. So let's figure out.
I'm definitely number two. After that first cup of coffee, that's it. If I go for a cup or the second cup, and this is with caffeinated, I can make it to a second cup with decaffeinated, but even still, I start to feel the jitters. So I don't even really drink coffee like that, even though I have the smell just coming to my spirit randomly sometimes. And to be at night, like last night, like last night, I don't know what it was, but I just smelled coffee, taste coffee.
Figure out our question: do humans solve problems faster when given caffeine? Now we gotta boil that down into a testable prediction. Remember, keep it clear, simple, and eloquent so that it can be replicated. Caffeine makes me smarter is not a great hypothesis. A better one would be, say, adult humans given caffeine will navigate a maze faster than humans not given caffeine. The caffeine dosage is your independent variable, the thing that you can change. So, you'll need some coffee. Your result or dependent variable, the thing that depends on the thing that you can change, is going to be the speed at which the subject navigates this giant corn maze. Go out on the street, wrangle up a bunch of different kinds of people, and randomly assign them into 3 different groups. Also, at this point, the American Psychological Association suggests that you acquire everyone's informed consent to participate. You don't want to force anyone to be in your experiment, no matter how cool you think it is. So the control group gets a placebo, in this case decaf. Experimental group 1 gets a low dose of caffeine, which we'll define at 100 milligrams, just an eye-opener and like a cup of coffee's worth. Experimental group 2 gets 500 milligrams, more than a quad shot of espresso dunked in a Red Bull. Once you dose everyone, turn them loose in the maze and wait at the other end with a stopwatch. All that's left is to measure your results from the 3 different groups and compare them to see if there were any conclusive results. If the highly dosed folks got through it twice as fast as the low dose or placebo groups, then Bernice's hypothesis was correct and she could rub my face in it saying she was right all along, but really, that would just be the warm flush of hindsight bias telling her something she didn't really know until we tested it. Then, because we've used clear language and defined our parameters, other curious minds can easily replicate this experiment and we can eventually pool all the data together and have something solid to say about what that macchiato was doing to your cognition, or at least the speed at which.
But also realizing there was still a lot of variables, a lot of things you did not know about the people who you was putting the caffeine in. So, again, science. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to be able to control everything. All of this is just people making what they feel are informed decisions based on repetition, controlled environments of experiments, and quote-unquote non-controlled environments. So yeah. So experimental group and control group, you get the point. So I always felt it's just so many uncertainties. So I can't ever 100% just believe in what one scientist is saying, because another scientist may have done the same experiment and got a different calculation, so forth, so on. Because the people who came up with the math behind science and physics, really that's what it is, behind physics, that's them coming up with a formula that made sense for what they have repeated. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot, bro. It's a lot. You know what I'm saying? And for people who don't think like me, it's just what they said is what they said, and what they said is correct, unless you can prove otherwise. You know what I'm saying? Bookie, I'm a realist, and the reality is
which you can run through a maze. Science. Probably the best tool that you have for understanding other people. Thanks for watching this episode of Crash Course Psychology. If you paid attention, you learned how to apply the scientific method to psychological research through case studies, naturalistic observations, surveys, and interviews and experimentation. You also learned about different kinds of bias and experimentation and how research practices help us avoid them. Thanks especially to our subbable subscribers who make this and all of Crash Course possible. If you'd like to contribute to help us keep Crash Course going and also get awesome perks like an autographed science poster or even be animated into an upcoming episode, go to subbable.com/Crash Course to find out how. Our script was written by Kathleen Yale and edited by Blake T. Pass.
all right. So honestly, I don't even have much to say at this point, because my whole thing was summed up as I was reacting to the video. So y'all have a good one. See y'all soon. Catch me on the next one.